consider the needs of others above yourself. Deny yourself. Practice communication. Learn how to deal with healthy conflict. And this can actually be a source of really good life and grace for you. Hi, my name is Pastor Dale from Edwardstown Baptist Church, and welcome to our messy Q&A. Thank you to those who have submitted questions as a result of the sermon series that we're going through at our church. Just a quick heads up, the topics and issues that we're dealing with are not child friendly. I definitely would recommend that you talk about your children with this stuff, but just to let you know, parental guidance is definitely recommended. So we had 7 really great questions submitted this week on our very first week of opening up to Q&A on this messy series. I want to deal specifically with 3 of these questions today because I think they have a very similar theme. And let's just start with the real tricky one. The first question I want to address today is, there's a statement. It says, increasingly Christians are acknowledging that some people are born with an orientation to same-sex attraction or other gender identity. If that is true, why would God allow that? And what is the best way to a grace and truth response? So that's a very, very powerful question. Whether people are born with an orientation to same-sex attraction or other gender identity, I would say, even at this point scientifically, is debatable. But even given that point, the following question is like, well, if so, why would God allow that? And that to me is a very, very broad question about God's allowance of things into our lives that we are going to have to struggle with and might cause suffering. I mean, a similar question could be asked by a family who has a beautiful child who is born with a disability. Why would God allow that? Why would God allow suffering? Why would God allow someone to be orphaned? Why would God allow someone to, as a child, get leukemia or something like that? So that's a very, very broad question about why does our lives, underneath the guise of God, include suffering? Can I just tell you that the Bible doesn't answer that question? The question that the Bible does answer is, how do we walk in light of suffering? So I recognize that there are some people who want to honor God with a biblical sexuality, who find themselves same-sex attracted, that are going to find themselves because of that in a place of having to practice self-denial and abstinence. A lot more could be said of that, but it links to another very good question, which I think deals with a similar theme. Someone put in a question, if you are ready to commit to marriage, but you're not married yet, is it okay to make love or really to have sex as a Christian? Well, let's define okay. If by okay do you mean, is it fun and is it enjoyable? The answer is, well, yeah, of course it is. But if by okay do you mean, like, does it fit within the biblical parameters of marriage, then no. Biblical sexuality happens between a man and a woman within the covenant of marriage. 20% of people who are engaged, last statistics that I looked up, don't end up getting married. So for starters, there's no assumption that just because you've decided to get married that you're going to get married. So look, it's just a matter of a date. We're going to have sex then anyway, so let's just move the date forward and, you know, in the eyes of God, we'll just act like a married couple. So the thing here again is around self-control. I've been married for 34 years. I've been a pastor for 30 plus years. And I'm here to tell you, self-control is one of the things that we're called to as Christians. Luke chapter 9, verse 23. If anybody wants to be my disciple, let him take up his cross, deny himself, and follow me. So one of the fundamental postures of a Christ-following disciple is self-denial. Now, I'm with somebody, I love them. It's not like you just slip the marriage ring on your finger and all of a sudden you're sexually attractive. I mean, a part of being engaged is you are sexually attractive. But practicing self-denial in this is a form of Christian discipleship. And I know this is very, very hard. Oh my gosh, when I was engaged to my beautiful fiance, it's like you're young, you got hormones, you're ready for life, you're going to create a family sometime. But the ability to say no in that space actually then produces other fruit too. Most of the people and this again is just an observation from me for years and years of marriage counseling and stuff like that. If you can practice self-denial in the stages of engagement to say no to sexual activity and say yes when married, let me tell you how much trust that builds with your spouse, because there will come a day when you're in the business world or you're in the office and you have a beautiful co-worker or a very sexually attractive co-worker and there's chemistry of some type or another. If you were able to say no to your future spouse when you're engaged, let me tell you how much trust your spouse will have in you as you deal with the people in your workaday world who are also sexually attractive. It builds trust, and self-denial also builds character, and it also teaches us to say no to our flesh. And this leads probably to the third question that I think is connected here. Is it wrong for a husband or wife to expect regular sexual relations with their spouse? Is a difference in sex drives the result of an unhealthy relationship? Thanks for your question. If by regular, do you mean once a year? I'm joking. All right, I'm joking with. Do you mean once a week, or like she wants it weekly and you want it monthly, and or vice versa, or what is it? What happens? Is the difference in sex drive the result of an unhealthy relationship? Well, no. I'm not a sex therapist, and if you want advice on that, we're going to put some resources in the description below. But there are so many things that contribute to a difference in sexual appetites. Hormones, lifestyle issues, was there sexual abuse in somebody's background, hormone levels, so many things, culture, so many things contribute to a difference. How we deal with difference is how we practice Christ-like love for one another. So, if someone has an appetite here, someone has an appetite here, consider the needs of others above yourself. Deny yourself. Practice communication. Learn how to deal with healthy conflict. And this can actually be a source of really good life and grace for you. So a couple of the other questions that we received dealt with sort of a different category of question. Someone submitted a question that says, how to love someone in actual practice who does not follow biblical sexuality. So, I mean, that could be in a number of areas, right? In terms of their posture towards gay marriage, their posture towards transgenderism, things like that. This links very strongly to another question that somebody submitted, how to respond to the issue of inclusiveness when challenged by a non-Christian, atheist, or even Christian youth. How do you explain the truth of biblical sexuality to one who does not know or care about God? So, first of all, if you're dealing with somebody who doesn't believe in the authority of Scripture or the right of God to give us directions for our lives, you actually have nothing to give except the truest version of yourself, and allow them to see you live and watch you flourish in terms of how you're practicing your life and how you're practicing your sexuality. Not with a defensive posture, bullhorn approach to evangelical Puritanism. I guess what I'm saying is we're called to love everybody. The Scripture even says love your enemies. So all kinds of differences for the Christian, we have to practice a posture of love towards that. So, and it's actually not your job. It's not my job, and it's not your job to actually convince somebody that this is the best way to live. The challenge here is being a life of witness and flourishing and difference at the same time as accepting others in their difference, whilst not affirming them in their sexual practices that might fall outside biblical parameters. So this is a bit of a challenge, isn't it? How do we live in truth and how do we live in grace? So I wouldn't even bother to explain it, honestly, unless they ask you, like, did you guys not have sex until you got married? Why? What was that about? Or what do you think about gay marriage? Oh, you don't support that? Are you a bigot? Talk to me about that. So we have to be ready to give answers, as the Scripture says, but do it with grace and with gentleness so that people can actually listen. And I think our posture in this is really, really important. So how do you love someone who doesn't follow biblical sexuality? Well, you love them just like Jesus loved them. There's so many examples in Scripture of people who didn't follow, quote, biblical Christianity, like prostitutes, people who'd had multiple marriage partners and things like that. And we see Jesus treating them with dignity, respect, and having good, honest conversations with them without condemning but also without compromising himself as well. And so this is the posture we're called to in this day and time, to be light and salt, and to be comfortable with that, and be okay with the fact that people aren't going to agree with this. We don't need people to agree with this. We live honestly before God, and we live humbly before each other, and we live with integrity within the system that God has created for us. So, send your questions. What a great start. Continue to submit your questions to us. We'll do our best to get back to you. In the description below, there's a link there where you can submit your questions or your comments. But God bless you. Look, this is such an important part of life, and God actually wants you to flourish and thrive in this area, and so do we. So God bless. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you later.